Hello and welcome to our webinar on how to earn a living from vehicle diagnostics now and in the future. The webinar is based on questions and issues we come across daily in thousands of workshops and workshop businesses worldwide.
So some of the questions are you struggling to build customers for all the time you spend diagnosing issues? Do you want to earn decent money from diagnostics and auto electronics now and in the future? Don't know what equipment to invest in next? What training should you be doing now? What direction to go in for technical support and technical information and data? What changes to block exemption since Brexit, how this affects you, your business, now and in the future. And modern vehicles, exactly how complex are they likely to get and what's next? Aftermarket tools, how good are they and what is their future? Remote diagnostics, can you make any money from them and what's their future? And also OEM tools. What are they? How do you get them? And what options do you have? How can you ensure that your business will be ready for the future? How to make opportunities out of the complexity.
So just going to tell you a little about ourselves. So we're from Vehicle Diagnostics. We're a diagnostic tool technical support business basically. We supply dealer tools, AC equipment, training, technical support, vehicle technical support, tool technical support. We support all the major vehicle manufacturers' brands, and we basically are here to help the independent garages grow and maintain profitability. We'll talk a bit about our backgrounds in a minute. We originally established in 1999 as Maverick Technology. We've been through a lot of things over the years, a lot of the technical evolutions from the very basics of diagnostics, and now we're firmly carrying on the world of ADAS and EV and hybrid vehicles. So about us, who are we? We are vehicle master techs, system engineers and IT professionals, so a real bunch of people from different fields actually. So we've come from diagnostic tool manufacturers, workshops, car sales, the robotics industry, believe it or not, IT support and motor factor groups, more importantly as well. So why we're here today is basically the need for dealer tools has increased tenfold since 2014, as many of you would be aware. The need for information and training tech support will become more important than owning a set of spanners in the next 10 years. So just an introduction to me first. I'm Andy Brook. I'm an old boy. Over the last 25 years, I've worked as a diagnostic tech, really from the beginning of diagnostics. I've sold and supported OEM tools. I've worked with manufacturers to develop diagnostic tools. I've done training programs. I'm now quite involved with the IAAF and UKF car. This is all the technical things to do with CERMI, block exemption, that sort of side of it, which is really, really important to anybody in the trade to keep their rights to use not only diagnostic tools, but to be buying non-original parts, let's say, and other things. So to keep the motor factors in business and all you guys in the garages in business. So I'm working on that. So I'm feeling quite well placed to talk to people about the market currently.
And I'm Dave Jones. I'm here to answer all your technical questions. So I've worked in all areas of diagnostics. I've sold, supported, developed software and hardware since the early days of diagnostics, where I worked for LS UK back in the early 1990s on single point and multi-point fuel injection and Lucas CAV diesel. So yeah, I've worked quite heavily and pioneered pass-through tools in the UK now for well over 10-12 years. I'm known in the business as awesome knowledge. Some of you who know me may agree, may not agree. And Andy and I started Maverick Diagnostics in 2017 following on in 2016 from the purchase and the demise of the old Maverick Technology business. And we set it up with the sole intention to support dealer diagnostic tools, services and support to the aftermarket, and a lot more.
So let's go back to the beginning. So quite honestly, I've written all this down, but I'll just really talk through this. Like everybody, I started off with some very basic tooling. Most of it cost a fortune back in the day. When the first set of tools came out, they were costing me over £3,000. Once all the big box Krypton and all that went out the window. I mean, I keep lots of tools, and Dave will tell you all about this. We were actually chucking a few away this week. I do things like, and I've put this in here, I've got an old Army Scan 1, so I can do Discovery 1 faults, like that's ever going to happen. But, I have a whole plethora of tools that I use. But what we really want to talk about at the moment is, did they ever pay for themselves? And this is quite a relevant point when we go through to the future as well, and what's going to pay for itself. And I've put here, for the answer, we need to look back at the beginning of modern diagnostics. Started after the flash code era, because flash codes were flash codes. You could count those, you had a book, so it didn't matter. Most workshops, when we started off really selling diagnostics, developing them, were just happy if they could communicate with the car at all. That was the selling point. You had a boot full of tools. They'd say, I've got this over here, plug in. And if you can communicate with that lad, I'll buy the tool. And that was basically, we used to clear the codes and hope for the best. And as I've put in here, a lot of people just worked upon the fact that they would replace the component mentioned in the fault description, which was very hit and miss. Now I've put, thank God we're all a bit more educated now, but to be fair, there are people still using diagnostic replacement techniques. So if you're still doing that, I think you really need to listen to the rest of this webinar, because we'll allude to a little bit more about that later. So carrying on with that, when we started with these initial diagnostic checks, it was always the case. I mean, I know that my own garage was, my first one was in a little village, and I get people roll in and say, oh, the light come on my car, what does this mean? And I would just plug into the car and I wouldn't really charge them. And then looking back on that, did we ever get a return on investment from those, say, Snap-on or whatever tools I had at the time, or Bosch KTS or whatever it was I used to plug in? Did we get a return, and how do we get return on these modern tools is more up to date, So 20 years on, a lot of hindsight, smart workshops have initial diagnostic assessment and hourly diagnostic fees in addition to normal labour fees. We all need to pay for the additional training, software subscriptions, OEM fees, updating, blah, blah, blah. So basically what I'm saying is it's got very expensive, so we need to align our businesses with how to make profitability out of these tools. So I'm going to let Dave talk about the next slide in a second.
So yeah, advanced vehicle technology, we either love it or we hate it, but it doesn't really matter because it's here to stay. So a modern vehicle, it's basically just a collection of computers now. So it's like a laptop on wheels, all right? So if you're a bit of a technophobe, then this scenario gets far, far worse. Because when you investigate that latest fully digital vehicle with multiple systems, some of them have got driver assistance systems now, controlling the EV and hybrid batteries. As an independent workshop, how on earth do you keep up with any of this? And simply put, there's no magic bullet, there's no one does everything diagnostic tool. In fact, it's quite simple. You must readjust your views of diagnostics and your business, and you need to make an opportunity out of the complexity.
What we're saying here is, picture me, I love points and carbs, and I genuinely do love points and carbs. I'll play all day with them, but if you're thinking that Mrs. Jones's 2008 Peugeot is going to last forever and diesel engines are going to be around, you're deluding yourselves. They're going to get taxed out of the market. You can see what's already happening. Whether you love EV and hybrid, you look at every single TEV advert, they're there. And cars are sold these days on what infotainment system they've got, not what they do. And it's you can see yourselves where it's all going. So the complexity. I remember back in the day, and this shows my age, when we were dead excited because a car had power steering. Now the standard fitment on a car is going to be ADAS, TPMS, you name it, it's going to have it over the next few years. So you've really got to get with the program on this.
Yeah, it's hard to think that Euro 5 is probably more than 10-year-old. So, the DPF, diesel particulate filter, first introduced over 10 years ago.
So I talk a little bit about tools now. So a lot of people don't really understand where the tools come from, and Dave and I are particularly well placed because we've actually worked in this, designing tools, guided user interfaces, doing the actual engineering side of it, so we can actually explain to you how they're made from the bottom end. We still do quite a bit of this for businesses and do development and testing and stuff. So what are they, aftermarket tools? So I'm going to let Dave have a chat through this one.
Yeah, so all legitimate aftermarket diagnostic tools, they've generally been reverse engineered from an OEM or a genuine dealer tool. So this in reverse engineering, it's totally legal. So you're actually replicating the process. You're not actually copying the process. So there's no copyright procedures in place for it. So you're actually trying to replicate how these things work, and you're recording and you're reversing engineering from that process. So in the case that the inevitable, there's no expensive legal actions with any OEMs that can come into question.
What we're saying now is basically, if you copy it, which we've known some manufacturers do, it inevitably ends up in a really expensive court case, is what we're saying now. But if you look on the diagram here, this is just showing what happens after the event, really, which is you don't have any connection to the OEM server, you don't have a connection to the cloud. The aftermarket tool just works independently. I know some of you are going to say some of the new stuff has gateway module access, but that is gateway module access. That is not connecting to OEM. That is just literally a gateway that unlocks and gives it a code for security gateways. But here's a real important point in this. So vehicle software is now recognized as a key component of all vehicles. So forget electric motors, engines, whatever you thought in the past, software is where it's at. So they spend hundreds of millions yearly in development, the OEMs, to keep vehicles in their own dealer networks, safeguard their huge investments. OEM software now makes vehicles very secure and very, very difficult to reverse engineer. How they achieve this is to source software on cloud portals and to add security gateway modules to the vehicle. As I said, you can unlock the security gateways legally and stuff like that, but that actually, every time you go in with your tool, that is actually going to cost the diagnostic tool manufacturer a couple of euros to do it.
Or the user.
Or the user, yeah, which is depending on what tools you use. Bosch, Delphi, they have all those access. These changes give manufacturers the ability to change software on a daily basis. When they're on a cloud, it just downloads the car, which we'll explain later, and it goes, hello, shakes hands with the car, and the OEM tool basically does it and updates it to the latest version, a bit like your iPhone.
Yeah, but let's be clear, the aftermarket tools, they'll always have a place in the market.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're still going to use them every single day. There are still going to be scenarios where you just want a quick, simple code read to give you that base idea.
And as we put in here, we actually use them every day in the workshops. We've got a selection of aftermarket tools, anything from Bosch, G-Scan, you name it, we've got it. And we'll read a car because we know what roughly they cover and what they're quite good on. But say, for example, we had a car yesterday where we couldn't do anything with it, and we realized quickly it needed a software update, so we had to get the OE tool, and we found out there was a load of technical service bulletins to update a load of other modules, and we could have spent all day with the aftermarket tool messing around and getting absolutely nowhere. As soon as we plug the OEM tool in, bang, it's off. So we'll talk a little bit more about pass-through next. So Dave, fill your boots, you're the pass-through man.
Yep. So what about pass-through, I hear you say? Well, yeah, we've been personally involved with pass-through since 2006. It was a great hope when it was released for the aftermarket, came from America into the UK, and it was the big buzzword at the time. Was J2534 pass-through, answer to all our prayers. However, actually, it's been quite a big letdown, as it's been influenced by the vehicle manufacturer's security policies. And the issue and the problem is that with pass-through, different vehicle manufacturers have treated this and viewed this slightly differently. So some manufacturers will give you the basic bare minimum of J2534 functionality, which is really just for software updating of existing modules. Other manufacturers have really embraced it and taken it that step further and more or less turned it into a cheaper version of a dealer diagnostic tool. And they've seen that there's an opportunity for the OEMs to make money out of providing this service. So again, speed of programming, originally it's down on the OEM tool. It's generally not as quick. And again, you're paying by the hour or day or week or month to run them long term. So again, cost effective. It's very, 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 very good at that. It helps you budget, helps you pass that cost on to your customer. So you still pay to use the tool, but it's strictly controlled by the vehicle manufacturers. You've got to go through all the security application processes and all of the hoops that you'd need to jump through to make sure that you get unlock the ability to unlock the full functionality. So yeah, doesn't cover pre-Euro 5 vehicles, which I've just mentioned earlier. So typically it'll go back to, most of them will go back to roughly about 2009, 2010. And again, older than that, and that again can be quite frustrating when you have a vehicle and you think it's on the cusp of being able to work with J2534, but you plug it in and the capability is not there. So it can be quite frustrating, not knowing that kind of cut-off, as it's centered around the Euro 5 emissions rules rather than an exact year. So you do get caught out by, I've got a 2010 vehicle, will it cover this with pass-through? Again, it's a little bit of a grey area. Some manufacturers will cover and some won't. And then of course there's the difficulties then on the newer vehicles, the DOIP protocol, the diagnostics over internet protocol. Again, another set of rules and regulations, and another method of communicating, a lot faster method of communicating. So maybe the solution, you don't get them out and work on them all the time. You get the tools out from 1 week to the next. So again, and as we've just alluded to, the manufacturers update their software quite frequently. So it's really quite important that these tools are at least being brought out into the workshop, plugged in, switched on with an internet connection, and given the ability to update these tools so that you're always keeping your software up to date with the manufacturers so that you can then update the vehicle with the latest information.
I think the bottom line with this, David, is that you go through all your registration process for pass-through and your security, and actually you're not really getting end-to-end coverage that you'd get if you just bought an OEM tool and use the same software, is what you're basically saying. So,
it's the same registration process, your same application process of going through in the main for J2534 for pass-through as it is with a main dealer tool. So you're kind of going through the motions of your applications, only to then use a watered-down version of their software.
Now, we've had many customers over the years after doing this for 12 years where they've started off with PT. We used to sell Cardac on the original sellers of DrewTech Cardac and stuff like that. And then after, most of those customers now have gone to OEM tools because of the frustration, I guess.
Yeah, J2534 pass-through, it's a great stepping stone to using the dealer tool. It gets your feet wet, it gets your appetite wet, it shows you what is available in the tools outside of your aftermarket all makes tools. So it has got a place in the market. It's ideal for those workshops that have got multiple manufacturers entering their workshop on a daily basis, where to go out and buy genuine dealer tools in their 10 different vehicle manufacturers would be quite expensive. Pass-through does make that slightly more appealing in that respect, and as I say, it gets you on that little path and that stepping stone to using the OE tools, and you're familiar with them when you make that transition.
So I'm going to talk about a little bit of a tricky subject here, which is remote diagnostic tools and providers. And in case you don't really know what a remote diagnostic tool is, it's really a box that you plug in at the car end. You ring up a technician or you go onto a phone app and they basically take over and they do a programming job for you. Now, Dave and I have been, again, involved with this from the very inception of these tools, but on the other hand, on my other hat, with the IAAF and looking at the rules and stuff like that, there are some issues surrounding these tools currently, and whether they'll be allowed to carry on is another question. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about these tools, really. So we've also found that they don't give you end-to-end programming functionality, and there's quite a few reasons behind that. I mean, a couple are to do with what we call rate, so timing, and timing from internet point to internet point, so they can't actually carry out those functions, because effectively you're getting an OE tool that's on the cloud to talk to another tool that's on the internet to another tool that's on the internet at the other end, so it literally times out while you're trying to do it. So for example, if you wanted to program a BMW, you haven't got a chance with them really. There's quite a few things that they get around with this by writing their own what they call script files and pushing script files to do programming. The biggest problem is, and this is a big problem for me and this is a big problem for the IAAF, if the OEMs have their own way, remote diagnostics suppliers using OEM tools will be shut down for security violation, as they say, can't keep track of who's using the tools. Now, those of you who already have OEM tools, you know all about this. So you have to apply for security, and when you apply security, you have to do things like give your passport across, your mother's date of birth, you know, all sorts of stuff, so you can have your security access to do your key programming, etc. The VM terms and conditions state all of this, and this is likely to become a feature in the CERMI regulations. So I'll talk about the CERMI regulations and bits and pieces in a bit. Special agreements to be made under license with certain calibration functions with certain of these manufacturers. Manufacturers already shut down some operations and threaten court action with others. Many remote diagnostic tools are now using aftermarket tools to be more cost effective. Can't give you examples of those for legal reasons, but a lot of them are at the moment because they're being sniffed upon by the OEMs. The OEMs have got billions of pounds to play with, and these guys haven't. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to show you why this becomes prevalent on the next slide, actually. So this is from to one of our customers in December last year, and basically just what's highlighted is it's hard to explain this, but basically Mercedes have made us, or him, so it's a him, sign a contract here to use the software, and in the contract it says you must not use Entry Diagnostics, remote diagnostic software, and they threatened to shut him down because of this. Whether it's legal on the block exemption side in the IAAF and other parties, we don't really feel it is, but the fact is that he's had to sign those terms and conditions as a user to be able to use that software, and like any terms and conditions, if you break them, you can get screwed over for 25 grand, as it says at the top there. The point being is, if you rely on these remote diagnostic tools and they get shut down, there's going to be a big problem. And the other point about these is, from a purely business point of view, how much are they charging you to do a key, and how much could you actually get one done for if you did it yourself? I know a lot of you say, oh well, I'm not going to invest in OEM equipment or whatever, but it might be worth thinking about, because if these guys do get shut down, you're going to be left high and dry anyway.
Yeah, I think the key area there is, you know, it says this means that you must not resell, rent, or share. And sharing of your independently obtained user credentials, these user credentials are given to an individual. They are specific to you, not for a whole workshop. If there are 5 technicians in your workshop all wanting to carry out security related tasks on these vehicles, then all 5 technicians must have their own security accreditation procedures in place.
Dave, you can go.
So why not buy a copy or a clone of the original tool and software? Well, simply put, basically, they don't work any longer. as we've just alluded to, they're being the actual genuine tools are being updated far too frequently. All the connections are now done all in the cloud. It's you know, by the time you've bought a clone of the original tool, it's out of date. It's very hard to get hold of the software, you know, to keep yourself up to date. Yeah, simply put, they just don't really work any longer. You know, again, confession time. Like many other diagnostic techs, you know, we didn't really start with genuine original tools. We've started with copy clone tools. You know, we've tried them. Again, it gets you hooked. It shows you what is achievable using an actual proper official genuine registered tool. But again, can leave you a bit high and dry, you know, because sometimes what's actually inside these copy tools isn't the same components and complexities and built on the same boards, etc., as what the genuine tools are. So some functions will work and some functions don't, and they're not really designed to work in a workshop environment on a daily basis by consistently being used. And of course, you know, manufacturers have been wise to these, and they're starting to block certain serial numbers via device because they know which machines are being copied and cloned, etc. So yeah, as we've alluded to here, you know, it's most VMs, they've moved now to cloud-based platforms, so it makes them very difficult now to keep up to date with the copying and distribution of up-to-date software.
Yeah, there's a few more bits in here, but one of the interesting bits was we're dealing with some guys with Mercedes a couple of years ago, and then they disappeared, and we later found out they'd been arrested by Interpol, and they're now in a Russian prison for copying the security crack in Mercedes key encryption software, the back end of Mercedes. So yeah, it can be pretty serious, this stuff, when you're going against vehicle manufacturers. As I say, I mean, I think sort of, I'd say probably 90% of these don't work, or they're out of date now. There's people who will be sat there saying, no, I've got one that works perfectly, but believe me, it's not going to be up to date. It's not going to do the latest security encryption. It's not going to do the latest modules. Everybody thinks it's, you know, I've got one that works, but to tell you the truth, they're never quite the same because we've experienced most of them.
Yeah, not sure the cost actually outweighs the actual failure of a device if it fails. You know, you spend a lot less money on a Chinese clone tool. What happens then when it effectively damages an ECU or the
bricks the entire car, as we've
the
had?
function doesn't work. Is it really worth saving that little bit of money by buying a Chinese clone tool? Our experience says not.
Not anymore. No, it did work a few years ago. God, it worked really well. But now, I mean, Mercedes are a massive example of this. How they've just completely tightened up their security over the last 18 months. It's been ridiculous what they've done. But you know, they can't be hacked, and that's it now. Really, people saying, oh, I've got versions of it, but they don't do any SA encoding. They don't do anything really in the back end that they should be doing. Very difficult to do. So we're both going to talk about this. So OEM tools present the best option, but they need regular updating. There's an ongoing usage cost associated with them. They give the best option for accurate information guided diagnostics. There are processes to follow to register. With OEM tools, you have to adjust your business plan slightly to get in line with the OEM policies. Now, we talk about this all day because this is basically what we've done for the past few years. But we'll talk about it more philosophically to start off with. So we're saying basically here that the main dealer technician doesn't really know more than you. What we're saying is, because of vast complexity of vehicles, it levels the playing field. The main dealer tech and you are only as good as the tools and information and training available. In other words, you need to decide time and money to get on board. Overall, you have your chance to compete if you ever have the right business plan. Now, that sounds a bit weird, but as I said, we've been doing this a long time. We have a complete program for people to go through building their business into an OEM tool business. And it starts off with saying, really, look, you know, you're going to have to start to charge people properly if you want to compete properly, and you're going to have to dedicate probably one guy in your workshop who we can train, or other people can train, whoever can train, and you're going to have to accept that you're going to need support because the vehicles are becoming more complex. So we'll talk about this in a little bit more depth later on, but basically, yes, OEM tools, it is known they present the best option, but they are tricky, and they're made very, very tricky by the OEMs putting all the processes in place and trying to skate along the lines of block exemption to the nth degree. And again, this is something that I do and look at and shout at the OEMs, or get other people to shout at the OEMs for trying to break all these policies. But effectively, as a team here, this is what we do. We try and get your business in line to get you working with OEM tools, as well as your aftermarket tools, as well as your pass-through tools, as well as your remote diagnostic tools. We do pretty much everything. But the whole point is, at the top lies the OEM tool, where it's been developed every day and costing billions of pounds to develop. So we'll explain a little bit more about how you can use that. So I'm going to talk about security applications, block exemption, current processes, CERMI, and I've spelled NAFTAS wrong. I've just realised up there, and other things to explain. So not to bore you too much with this, what you need to know, first of all, what block exemption is. Most you already know, I'm sure. It's a non-competitive law. The law provides competition in the automotive industry, as vehicle owners have the opportunity to repair and service the vehicles at whatever workshop they feel like, basically, as long as you go by the rules. We adopted block exemption before Brexit, but we've got a lot of work to do, because unfortunately we haven't moved it on since Brexit. Even though MBVR block exemption has been extended to 2028, we've still got a lot of work to implement the requirements at a technical level. What that basically means is we haven't pulled all the other stuff over from Europe yet, which will allow us to carry on. So this is a huge bit of work that we're doing at the moment, so we can carry on implementing all the bits they've implemented in Europe effectively. That's what it means.
So the UK government obviously have got a lot more still to do now, and have more of an impact now than what we've had when we had the luxury of being in Europe. So of course now we're now standing on our own. We've now got to fight for our own rights to repair.
So it's a bit of a problem, but it's something we're working on, and you can understand with COVID, Brexit, all the other stuff, it's been pushed to the back, so we're trying to push it to the forefront again. If we don't get this, I mean, put it nicely, we're a bit screwed. So we will do, we'll work on it. How do you currently apply for vehicle diagnostic tools? Current process is completely controlled by each individual manufacturer, guided by block exemption. As I say, they skate across the rules and they make it as hard as possible. They generally want you to be a limited company with a VAT number, use no manufacturer's logos and website or socials, carry out no remapping, DPF removal. These are basic criteria. All of that is in Euro 5, Euro 6 regulations. So basically what it's saying in there is, don't piss them off in any way, otherwise they won't help you. Excuse my French, but that's really what they're trying to do to us. Now, the process in the future changes. So we've got something called CERMI, which is a European-based scheme. And it's a better scheme because it's administered by the aftermarket rather than the vehicle manufacturers. And what this really means, I'm not going to go into it too much because you'll see a lot about this, I'm sure, in the press over the next couple of years, is that it will allow us to control, through a national accredited body, you get a license and basically you will get a passport to go on to the OEM portals. You have to be clean, just like on the previous slide with the manufacturers, to get onto those. But once you've got your passport, I know the RMI, and I do talk to Kevin Finn from the RMI, and there's quite a few of the guys I deal with in the IAAF, like Neil Pattermore, etc. We're all batting for the same thing on CERMI, but there is a second option to this, which is, and I've spelt it right this time, NASTAF, National Automobile Service Task Force, and that's currently used by Ford. It's used in the US. It's a US-based service, effectively, which works slightly differently to CERMI because it's controlled by the manufacturers. Now, that could also be applicable in Australia and some in Europe, as I say. It depends how it really goes through these talks through 2023, 23 on how we're going to go with all of this.
The benefits, I think, of both these schemes are that it's a one application process. So it's not currently at the moment like you now have to apply to each individual manufacturer and you have to adhere to their own rules and regulations. So just because you've got security clearance for Mercedes does not necessarily guarantee you security clearance for Jaguar Land Rover or BMW. This kind of levels the playing field and makes it a one application.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're saying is, if we can knock a few heads together in Westminster and we can go for CERMI accreditation through the European Union, it's going to make our lives a lot easier for everybody, and you then have access. Bear in mind, this is not just access to OEM tools, this is access to parts, this is access to information, this is access to wiring diagrams, this is access to absolutely everything. So it's really important that we go through all of this in the next couple of years. Okay, so enough boring about the political side of life. We'll go on to something else. Now for the good news, because of block exemption, you, the independent workshop, has the right to have access to all OEM information, diagnostic data, diagnostic tools and training. This has cost the OEM millions to develop, but all is obviously at a cost, but not as much as you think, typically about €11 an hour. Most OEMs offer pay per document or pay per hour. In other words, you have the right to compete directly with your local main dealer, so why not embrace the challenge? So this is what we're saying here. You've got the rights to do this, and it's not very expensive compared to what they've had to spend on it. And because of MBVR block exemption, they've basically been forced to give you this for, yes, a small fee, but you're able to have this. Okay. So next we're asking you to think about your business, and I've put here, sounds like a job interview. Where do you want to be and what vehicles do you want to fix in the next 5 years? Now, I've talked to several other businesses about this who do training and business training, and they're on the same page as this. So next, explore what path gives you best possible return on investments. So for example, you know, if you're fixing old cars and you're not making any money, don't fix old cars because you won't make any money. Fix something that's locally. If you had a Jaguar Land Rover technician in your workshop, why is he not fixing Jaguar Land Rovers, and why haven't you not given them the right tooling, etc., etc.? This is all stuff that we do with businesses, and this is the stuff that the RMI, IAAF and everybody else are involved with, as well as trying to get businesses up to speed, plus the IMI, which we're members of as well. It's all about trying to pull you forward for the future. Finally, start to plan training, tooling and vehicle coverage for the next 5 to 10 years. So what this means again is, I mean, for example, we've bought EVs. We bought EVs here in hybrid cars because we are playing with them, because we need to get to know them. Not only that, staff and us are driving them because we want to feel what they're like to drive and see what they're like to live on a daily basis, how the battery goes down, that sort of stuff. And I know it sounds completely and utterly nuts, but that's how you get ahead of the game in this world. And I'm a massive petrol head, so, you know, that's what we have to do. So we've put together a few hints and stuff we've picked up dealing with the workshops, big and small, over the last 25 years. So I'm going to start on a few of these.
It's all obvious stuff, as we've said.
Yeah, it's all really, really obvious. And if you talk to us, you can always call us. You can put comments at the end of the webinars and stuff like that. Really have a chat to our team, or have a chat to me and Dave, because we've been doing it a very long time, quite old. And and we've got a lot of experts that deal with on the business side as well that you can speak to, not in our business but in other businesses as well, people who give business training and other things like that. So I'm going to start off with this. So Dave, off you go, mate.
The business planning and strategies. So you need to make sure that you charge for everything. As soon as the diagnostic tool is picked up and plugged in, start the clock.
And we have written a separate blog about this that we're going to put out there eventually. We're just doing a few bits on it. So yeah, some hints and tips and things like that for how to do this, because it does start at the very beginning of when the car's been checked in and managing the customer's expectations and that sort of thing. So that's an entire separate thing to talk about, really. But just start to charge, boys and girls. That's the basic answer.
Also, don't bury your head about change. You know, hybrid, EV, advanced driver assistance systems, digital diagnostics, they're already here. You know, they're already in the independent aftermarket workshops. These vehicles, you know, the Nissan Leaf vehicle, electric vehicle, has been around now for a long time. It's
2010, 11, wasn't it? It came out.
2010. It's not EV. It's not new. The vehicles have been around for 10 years now. These vehicles must still need servicing, repairing, and visiting independent aftermarket workshops. You know, a 10-year-old Nissan Leaf, I don't think there are many customers that really want to be taking that vehicle back to their main agent, main dealer. I really think they want to find a really reliable aftermarket workshop.
And you've got loads and loads of what my missus has got, which is an old Mitsubishi PF, which used to be your company car.
Yeah,
so, you know, we've had them for years.
The Mitsubishi, that's a great
loads of those about,
yeah.
You know, tons of those.
So start reading articles, you know, about battery electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, and get out there, drive them yourself, see what they're about, see how they work, you know. And I remember my first, going back to the Mitsubishi, it had paddles on the steering wheel. I mean, why would you want paddles on a steering wheel for an electric vehicle that has no gears? You know, understand them, you know, it's for the regenerative braking side. See how it works, see what effects it has, you know. Yes, it means changing the brake pads isn't as frequent, so you're not going to be seeing these vehicles in your workshop on a really regular basis unless they develop an actual real issue and problem. You know,
we're already getting a load of faults with them. We've got a Leaf that we've got in here for experimentation that's got a charging fault at the moment that we're looking at. You're going to start working on these, and the next generation as well. We've got Teslas out there with faults now, which we know about. We know a couple of guys who are doing roaring trade in Teslas.
Yeah.
In repairs.
Next point, really simple one. Look at what cars that you most repaired during the last few years. You need to then think about specialisation, you know, or even cutting down to 5 or 6 key brands. We're seeing customers now that are becoming German vehicle specialists, you know, that are looking after BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Audi. We're seeing some French car specialists who are now focusing Citroën, Peugeot, Renault. You know, again with what's happened there with the Stellantis group, who have now adopted the Fiat and the Vauxhall brands. You know, so again, you possibly look at focusing on the Stellantis architecture group of vehicles: Fiat, Alfa, Citroën, Peugeot, Vauxhall. You know, as a group, you know, try to look for some form of think about the specialisation in those areas. You know, outside the box. I'm sure there's probably 5, or if you looked at your previous work that you've done over the last 12 months, I'm sure you'll see a trend and a pattern in the vehicle manufacturers that are coming into your workshop. So by cutting down to 5 or 6, I don't think really it'll have a huge, massive impact by not servicing those other 2 or 3 vehicle manufacturers. I don't think it'll be as huge a part of your business as you may think.
Plus, you can train your focus staff on them rather than have all your staff trained.
And the customers of those vehicle manufacturers, customers of those vehicle brands will find you. The word will get out there. You'll become the go-to man, the specialist in that particular vehicle manufacturer in your area. Invest in the tooling, invest in the training, invest in get as much information as you can, understand the vehicles, and the work will find you. Even from local garages that have decided to specialise in other vehicle brands, work together in smaller little groups to compete against the main dealers, the main agents. You'll still be cheaper than the main dealers, and more importantly, you'll still be able to repair them far quicker and get them into your workshop quicker than the dealers can.
So the next one is really important, which is, you know, starting to invest now. We've got a lot of people out there who we speak to who might ring up for an OE tool, and they just kind of go, no, it's too expensive, or, you know, I can't do this, or I don't want to retrain, or, you know, and they just want to bury their head, and they just go on, they buy the latest whatever OE aftermarket tool, and then they have a guy coming round to do their programming, which is pretty common, and then they have this and that and the other, and they have to take it to the main dealer, and it costs them a fortune, blah blah blah. So really what I'm saying is just build up your knowledge bases, get some training, start the processes, and in 5 years time it'll be forced. Unfortunately, this is what we're going to see, where the tech with the aftermarket is not going to keep up. Unfortunately, we already know this. This is why we're trying to encourage people to look into that side of the market.
You don't need to invest a small fortune. You don't need to go out and buy every single piece of dealer diagnostic tool. It is so expensive, but more more beneficial of that is it's if you bought one of each tool anyway, it's the knowledge and the training. It's that you need in order to operate the tool that's going to make the tool give you that return on investment that you're making. So by making those smaller one-off purchases infrequently, one a year, something like that, that gives you that to build on, rather than going out and spending and buying 10 bits of kit and trying to get to learn all 10.
Okay. Right, we're going to talk about technical support and data here. So we're massively involved with technical support and have been for quite a while. Through partners schemes that we have, we look after quite a lot of key account customers as well, people like ZF and Thatcham and lots of other bigger workshops. So we provide a lot of vehicle technical support in the market. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we think that you should do. Not talking about us now, not talking about OEM, but use real OEM technical data systems. So there are other technical data systems available. I'm not going to mention too many names on this, but there are a couple that are very, very, very good on the market which use genuine OE data. They're not the easiest to use, I've got to say, but they're the best because you've got the verified fixes in there. And as we put in here, increasing number of faults can be fixed by software updates. They can stop you chasing a known fault for days. This has become really, really, really apparent over the past 3 or 4 years that we've had ZF transmission specialists, for example, which we're now dealing with, and they've stripped entire gearboxes, they put them all back together, can't find a fault with them, and then lo and behold, there's a technical service bulletin that says simply update the software in this module, and it's done.
What we can definitely advocate really is how important electrical wiring diagrams are. The use of a genuine, proper OEM supplied electrical wiring diagram, it's worth its weight in gold compared to an aftermarket possibly might not be right for this vehicle wiring diagram. It'll save you so much time, even if it's just pinpoints the right colours of the wires and where they end up going to and from. Saves so much time in the actual diagnostic process.
The next one on here, which is one of my favourites, if it'll do it. Never Google faults. It's possibly the worst thing you can do. Inevitably they end up getting tied up in knots with opinions, not verified solutions. It's the modern version of a man down the pub says, and we see this all the time. In technical support, I've just Googled it and it says this. Well, actually, sir, we have the Vehicle Technical Service Bulletin in front of us, which is telling you completely the opposite thing. And funnily enough, when he tries that, it works. So it is the curse. And I've got to admit, everybody does it. I do it. Everybody does it. We go, oh, let's have a quick look and go. And you end up with 15 opinions and just don't bother because it's a waste of your time. Just use the correct data system and you'll find it straight away. As Dave was just alluding to, it can lead you up the garden path with the wrong diagram for the wrong vehicle because it could be out of date. It's not quite the right year. By the chassis number they changed it. It's really not a great idea to Google faults. Okay, subscribing to a vehicle tech support service. Now, this gets very, very interesting as you get, as we were alluding to, the main dealers also have access to VTS, the Vehicle Tech Support Services. I deal with quite a few people who work in main dealers, and we do talk quite a lot. And in fact, one of them is my brother-in-law, so we have a lot of chats about this. And basically, they're forever speaking to a technical support service about a problem with a vehicle. So what we're saying here is really for the cost. So you're talking probably £100 a month to create a load of tickets and have a second set of eyes looking on a job. It's cheaper than employing your own group of master techs. And you let them get on with it and you'll still carry on earning money while someone's looking at the problem. So to me, it's always been a bit of a no-brainer. Coming from the background that we come from, Dave, it's pretty straightforward. You have someone else there, which you ring up or you create a ticket for. We've a problem with the vehicle. They can tell you what the known fixes are and all the other bits while you're having a cup of tea and doing the next job.
Yeah,
so
the modern equivalent of calling out an auto electrician.
Yeah, It's a no-brainer. The guys that use vehicle tech support systems generally are the top 10% of the garages in the UK. They make a living from this, and they know that it's completely cost effective. So, it's foolhardy to say, "Oh, I'm not spending £100 a month or whatever," when actually, what's your hourly rate? This is where it comes down to it. And so from ones who deal with the top 10% of the really good garages in the country, that's what they all do. Okay. So we've alluded to this all the way through. So use an aftermarket tool. We've always used them. We'll carry on using them. It's a fast, not best solution, as we keep saying. It's fast, it's quick. If I go in to do, say, JLR Pathfinder, Dave, how long does it take to get JLR Pathfinder open and running?
Oh, you're spending a good 10-15 minutes before the tool is even ready to communicate with the car.
Exactly, and it's fantastic, but it's cloud-based, so it's up on the cloud. It has to piss around and do other things, and it's going to take a while. Now, however, if you plug in a lot of the aftermarket tools, so just go in and give you the basic reading. Okay, it's not going to fix the car, and don't 100% rely on the results, because this is a reverse engineered tool, as we said in the other section, in the early aftermarket section.
I have a question on the diagnostic tools for all our listeners out there at the moment. Do you think the main dealer just uses a dealer diagnostic tool in their workshop?
Nope, they don't, do they? We know they don't.
Or do you think they invest in an aftermarket tool for a fast, not the best solution, quick fix?
And we know that for an absolute fact.
Be interesting to see all you guys that have either worked in a main dealer or know people in a main dealer. How many of the workshops out there do you know that have got main dealer equipment that have to have it because they've got the franchise logo above the door? But how many of them actually have an aftermarket all makes tool? And I think it'd be quite high. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know for a fact, I'm not going to mention any names, but a certain large company that sound like Bosch I worked for supplied a lot of their tools to certain groups of dealerships to do that very thing, which was put in as saying these are verification checks for part exchange vehicles, but we knew they were actually using them in the
well, we do know
in the workshop.
We do know that Jaguar Land Rover also have on their approved devices list a small service tool, an SST tool, that they use for those simple jobs of winding calipers back, taking service lights out. They don't want to be tying up a dealer diagnostic tool that's used for investigation and fixing of problematic issues. They don't want to be tying that tool up for simple tasks such as doing service light resets, etc.
So we've already gone through this, so look at OEM tools. They're accurate, get around all security issues, software updating issues. They're not expensive to buy, so typically they're about $3,000, something along those lines, or to run. But you will need updating and support for the tools and stuff like that. You'll still be cheaper than a local main dealer, and you get to keep your customers. So that's kind of a lesson that we all know, and we want to keep our customers. And as Dave's already said, that if you can specialise, that's going to help, because you'll get customers from other workshops as well, hopefully. So training really is everything. Get as much training as possible, whether it's online or live. Just invest the time and money. It'll make you back time and money, both long and short term. This is, again, it's very short-sighted when people say, I haven't got time to go do training. The amount you learn, I mean, I'll give you an example. I went back and I did some Bosch Master Tech stuff a few years ago because I just felt slightly out of touch, and bloody hell, I learned a lot. And I was previously a Master Tech and had a degree as well. So, I mean, it really, really enlightens you doing any form of training. And we are constantly learning here and constantly doing training courses for our staff and for ourselves, because the technology is changing. But as I've put here, if you've not done any training for a while, don't be tempted to jump in too deep too quickly, because, look at doing the basics, things like sensors and actuators, because things move on. Example I give with this when I'm talking to people about this is, do you know how many different types of ABS sensors there are alone now? There's ones that go backwards, ones that go forwards, ones that do this, ones that, there's masses of stuff that you need to learn before you really get into doing things like EV and hybrid. You need to really understand the electrical basics and go back and start again to an extent. But just do some training when you can, because it's well worthwhile. Finally, very simple one, this really. It sounds very simple, but the amount of workshops that fall over just because of this simple thing is unbelievable. So investing in a decent IT infrastructure. So we'll talk to a workshop and they just won't have any decent IT infrastructure. They can't run tools. They even struggle to update their aftermarket tools. So what we mean by that is, like, you want some LAN sockets. So in other words, cable sockets you can plug into the laptop in the workshop, and some decent broadband as well. Over 50 megabits per second would be ideal, because everything is going cloud-based. And updates will eventually be over Wi-Fi, which Dave, you can tell us all about, because they're already in the main dealers. That's the way they do it. And as we said again, aftermarket tools will all be updated online. So Dave, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? So updates over cloud.
Yeah, I mean, you do need LAN sockets in your workshop as well as network switches. They're important. They are as important in your workshop as they are in your front office. You don't just need a computer on your front office to book the cars in and do the job cards. You also need them in the work area, where the money is generated in the back office. But cloud-based now. There are a few manufacturers. Jaguar Land Rover, obviously, very, very soon will obviously be offering the cloud-based diagnostic offering to independent aftermarkets. It's already in use in the main dealer. Volvo, again, with their cloud diagnostics. There are a lot of vehicle manufacturers now that can actually scan a car as they drive into the workshop because of their Wi-Fi infrastructure.
So unfortunately, if you want to compete, you want to keep ahead. There's lots of other stuff we speak about. We're going to keep this. It's been long enough already. We could talk about key reading. We've done different things on that in the past anyway. Again, this can be things which can get your business up to the forefront of stuff. So we're going to run this out as a podcast, and we're going to run it out live at some points as well, so people can ask us questions. So thanks for listening, and if we're doing it live, if you've got any questions, and you can go ahead and ask them. But if you're just watching the recording, I'm afraid you can't. So thanks very much from me.
And me, thank you. And we'll see you next time.